How good does this look? Hey guys, it's the Keto King here, and today I'm going to show you how to make spaghetti squash. Now, if you haven't had spaghetti squash in your life before, you absolutely have to try this. It is an amazing vegetable. It's a wonderful substitute for spaghetti or any other type of base to a keto recipe, and it really couldn't be easier to make. The ingredients you'll need are obviously spaghetti squash, some olive oil or an oil of your choice, and some salt and pepper. That's it. Let's get to this one. So preheat your oven immediately to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So grab yourself a spaghetti squash. This is what it looks like. They can be a little more yellow than this one and sometimes a little bit lighter, but this one's probably on the lighter side. What you're going to do is grab yourself a big or sharp knife and you're going to cut it long ways. My method of doing it doesn't necessarily mean it's the safest or best way to do it, but here's how I cut this one. Straight down the middle, and then you pull to each side with the knife. And then turn it around and do the same process. There we go. I then cut off this hard bit on the end. Then just grab a spoon. You'll scrape out the seeds and the guts of this spaghetti squash. I find a spoon is a good tool to use here. Just push fairly hard and it seems to come out with relative ease. Alright, and this is what it ends up looking like. Now, don't necessarily throw away these seeds because these are great roasted in the oven. I'm not going to do it for this video, but all you do is put them in the oven, a little bit of olive oil, salt on top until they're brown, and man, they taste good. Then you're just going to bring yourself over your oven pan lined with aluminum foil, or tin foil as it's called in South Africa where I grew up. Then we're going to use some olive oil and drizzle that over the inside of the spaghetti squash. Not entirely necessary, but then I like to grab a brush and just paint that all inside so it gives a nice coating over the entire inside of the spaghetti squash. Then I'm just going to crack on some salt and some pepper. I'm using some pink Himalayan salt here. Now, this is just the basic recipe on how to make spaghetti squash. There's a million different types of spices and flavors you can put on this, but this is the standard and it comes out superb. Then you're going to turn these back the other way around, put them down on the oven tray like this, and then we're going to pop this in your preheated oven. Alright, and in she goes, skin side up at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 minutes, and we'll check it after that. So now after 50 minutes, I had to do an extra 10 minutes because what you really want is for the spaghetti squash to be nice and soft. You just push a fork in and it goes relatively easily through. You don't want any hard spots anywhere in the spaghetti squash. And you'll see you got a nice golden brown color around the outsides. The same for this side too. Nice and soft when you push it in. That's when you know it is done. I'm gonna let this cool down for just a few minutes. Alright, and now that this has cooled down a little bit, still quite hot, but we're gonna put it on a plate, and then all you need to do to get out these spaghetti squash is grab yourself a fork and simply just pull lightly away from the sides of the spaghetti squash. And then continue doing that all the way around the bottom. And then simply pop that onto a plate. And then we'll just repeat that for the next one. Just from the sides, pulling it towards the middle. And you can see this wasn't a very big spaghetti squash, and look how much this makes. Now you can see where the spaghetti squash gets its name from. I mean, its texture looks similar to spaghetti. It's got these long spaghetti-like pieces. Works as a fantastic substitute for spaghetti. What I recommend here is just add a little bit more salt on top, slightly more pepper. How good does this look? And I tell you, eating this as is absolutely delicious. As ridiculous as it sounds, it has a typical squash flavor to it. It could be eaten as a side dish on its own, simply prepared like this. But there are so many different ways to use the spaghetti squash, as I mentioned earlier, as a base under a typical spaghetti dish, but using this in place of the spaghetti. Other recipes include making a nice sauce and then actually putting the spaghetti squash in the sauce and mixing it all around and then dishing it on a plate. I have a great recipe that does exactly that, which is coming up, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that one. So I hope you enjoyed this spaghetti squash 101. We've got a lot of great recipes coming up that I'm going to use spaghetti squash that I'm really excited to share with you. Comment down below, like the video, and subscribe as always. And of course, keep it keto. And there we go. Wasn't the cleanest cut I've ever done. Then just grab a spoon and you're gonna scoop out the inside, the seeds, and this, what would you call it? Pulp, what would you call it? You'll scrape out the seeds and the guts of this spaghetti squash. Then you're just gonna bring yourself over your oven pan lined with aluminum foil or tin foil, as I call it in the place where I was born. Or tin foil, as I used to call it. Or tin foil, as it's called in South Africa, where I grew up.